We'll slowly start. Are you guys appreciating the extra 10 minutes to get to this class? Let's do a round of applause. Like I said, 10 minutes doesn't cut it anymore. Poor Erin, yesterday, she's in one of my classes as a student over in ASTL, and you have to come from physics, and you were at least, almost 10 minutes late,
yeah,
right?
I got out of physics late too. So
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. A lot of times the instructor will hold you late, and I'm going to always try to cut off 1 or 2 or 3 minutes early, because let's get real. It's 10 minutes does not cut it anymore. So, and I don't think in this class yesterday, the last few days, I've ever said things like, if I were king of Purdue, and I always tell my classes that. Some of you have had me before, and there's ridiculous things like the 10-minute thing. You'd have at least 20 minutes or more, and there's different ways to schedule it. Class would start, but the instruction wouldn't start till 15 minutes after the start line. That way you can get here, you can talk to the TAs or the instructor or ask questions. If you notice, there's people always coming up to ask me questions and all that. Can you imagine if we weren't here and we just always 10 minutes off to someplace else? It'd be terrible. The other thing I'd do if I was king at Purdue is for Mackey Arena, the lower arena where all the old people sit?
Yeah.
They're out of there. You're there. The street out here that they're fixing, and I think there's still going to be traffic there, that would be a dog park. And if you're having a stressful day, go check out Brutus the Great Dane, or Stella the Pit Bull, or tomorrow, by the way, in Math 175, we're having a black lab visit. Royal. Beautiful black lab. Oh my gosh, he's an ex-show dog. He's retired. But we'll have him, because if you're taking a test, wouldn't it be really neat if you could pet a dog at the same time, or have a dog in your presence? And hospitals are doing this now, right? Rest homes are doing this, and finally, I've been doing this for years, but finally everybody else is catching on. It's very therapeutic to have a dog or a cat. Usually cats don't work well, away from their home, so it's usually dogs. But they're having dogs in courts now, courtrooms, to settle down people that are anxious, or the kids. It's just, I don't know why everybody took so long. Okay, I've got a bunch of things to do, but maybe before I forget it, last night I sent you an email that said, hey, if you ever want to submit a question to us, here's the website. So, it's like rodhours.com, and I'll show it to you that didn't look at it yet. So you just know, here's the kicker, it's a secret. That website is a secret, okay? So let me explain that to you. Here we go. If you go like this, the reason I'm keeping it a secret is because I don't want some yahoo from whatever state finding a click and then sending nasty stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I think it's 230 questions, and I think this is how, yeah. So there it is. But the thing is, nobody else knows about it except you and the TAs. So what happens is, and I will demonstrate this for you if you haven't done it. I mean, you haven't done it. Most people haven't done it. Okay, the program, there's certain things I can change and there's certain things I cannot. I cannot change where it says start quiz. It's kind of like programmed into it. I make the program, but then I crunch it, but there's certain things I can't change. I can't change that, but think of it as starting to get your question down. Then you're going to type your name in. And what's kind of neat is when I hit submit, I'll have to see, because my pocket should vibrate. Because I think that'll be sent to my secretary immediately. I think that's how I programmed it. Okay, there's Rod. Okay, so you hit submit, and then you type your question. I'll just say, how old is Rod? Okay, then we hit submit. I'm going to find out here. And then let's see if I can finish. It's not going to do anything. Get review. Okay, so yeah. I'm going to see if I get that. I probably should, but I'm not sure. I'll check later. Okay, anyway, it's been getting through because the TAs have 2 questions. See how I segue into this? You guys want to read the questions and then give a short answer?
Right.
Speak loud enough now, so yeah.
One question was, is there a way we can view our grades throughout the semester? So after each exam, and exams are the only grades, so after each exam you can get an answer key, and then you can compare your answer answers to what was on there, calculate your grade, and you can calculate your own grade. And then about halfway through the semester, you can submit what you have, and Dr. Aldrich will compare that to
Right.
what he
Yeah.
has.
There'll be a sheet of paper that you can fill out, assessment 1, assessment 2. Because remember, I don't use Blackboard. Okay. So that was a good question. You know, how do I? Because sometimes, you know, when you answer on the assessment, let's say there's 6 choices always, right? So question 1, you put down B. Well, then on where the questions are listed, then circle B. Remember? So do that, and then when you walk out, you'll get a key, and you go, oh yeah, I got it. There's always sometimes somebody will circle C, and then they'll, on their test that they take out, they put B. There's a little mistake once in a while like that, but usually not much, right? If you're careful and do it, and you'll have plenty of time, there won't be any rushing. That's the other thing about exams. You shouldn't have to rush to the end. We'll pass them out at about noon, and you'll have 20 minutes to do. How many questions are there on the assessment? Do you remember?
Usually 25.
Okay.
26.
I can't remember what the syllabus says. Sometimes there might be an extra one. So it'll be a good first trial for us. Then you'll get a flavor of it. But I would really promote studying and see what you can do, right? Okay, so then that's a great answer. Next question.
So the other question was, what are the 2 mechanisms for removal of senescent red blood cells? So just to go over the term senescent, that means age, like senescence is the eye. You want me to write that?
Yeah, that'd be good. Hey, excellent. Yeah, stand up and write that. Now the thing is, see how active they are? And I'm going to tell you a couple of Chinese proverbs that says the more active you are, the more learning there is. Senescent, old. So how do you, what was it, how to get rid of old red blood cells?
Mm-hmm.
And how long do red blood cells live? 100 days about-ish, 100 plus minus. So they're always dying. Carry on.
So there's a term for the removal of red blood cells. It's called erythrophagocytosis. So I'll write that too, if that's a long one.
Yeah, that's all one word. This is working out so good. This is neat. It's fun to watch other people do this. Well, exactly. But see, you're active, so yeah. Well, let me interject one Chinese proverb. Then I'll tell you another one later, because it's very appropriate right now. Here it is. To teach is to learn twice. To teach is to learn twice. If you ever have to get up in front of somebody and say something, don't you learn it better than having to just hear it from somebody?
So I know Dr. Ulrich likes his stems, and there's like 5 in here.
And see, she's helping you for tomorrow.
Yeah. So erythro is red. Phago, or like phage, is eat. Site is cell, and then osis is like state of, and it's usually like disease state of.
Yeah, a state of or a condition of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you speak loud enough that they're getting it back there. Erythrophagocytosis. That looks like you went to college. If you wrote that down and told mom, call her up and say, Mom, something exciting. We talked about erythrophagocytosis.
Yep, so this is the process of macrophages, which are a type of white blood cell. They take in the red blood cells, they essentially eat them. So they bring them in their cell membrane, and then they go through a process and they're broken down. And this occurs in 3 places. It occurs in the liver, the spleen, and then bone marrow as well.
Okay. So there's maybe even, they were asking 2 sites,
Yep.
and you gave them an extra one. Yeah. So liver, spleen, and bone marrow. That's where the old red blood cells. And you might say, why are old red blood cells targeted and ate? Why aren't the new ones? And the answer is old red blood cells don't look like regular blood cells. They look foreign. And anything foreign in the body is attacked, hopefully. So that's, yeah. Here we go.
Please don't hate me, but I was trying
Please
to
don't hate you, okay? That's step 1.
Okay, I was trying to get down like what yeah, that word.
That word. Just point, just point.
Yeah, that
word.
one. And I missed what it was.
Oh,
So
okay.
sorry.
Well,
Can you
urethral
see
is
it over
red.
here?
Yeah,
Can you see it written on the board?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, explain one more time.
So
the steps.
so this is the process of red blood cells being destroyed by macrophages, or like got rid of.
Yeah, and then you can take away the urethral and make a new word, phagocytosis. We've all heard about that. Eating. And you talked about macrophages, right? A type of white blood cell. What does the word macrophage mean, literally? Large eater. Macro. Yeah.
So what do the old blood cells look like?
Well, what do they look like? They don't, for us visually and histologically, unless you're really into hematology, you probably couldn't tell one that's ready to be phagocytized versus a regular healthy one. But the cells on the cell membrane, the old red blood cells, things will start breaking down in the phagocytes, macrophages I should say, will recognize them as foreign. Let's say foreign. That's, there's always deep answers, but for this level, this is how you think of them. But they do look different to the macrophages.
So you said make a page for red blood cells or the liver, the heart,
Okay.
and topics like that. For macrophages, is there a whole bunch of macrophages that we're going to be learning throughout this entire course?
And see, this first week, you guys have always had such great questions. Now, he's referring to video number 2 where I talk about the Ulrich technique of note extension. And your linear notes, if you just leave them day after day after day after, and then study from them, that's not the best way to do it. Take out key concepts, make that on top on the page. So let me see if I can get words started, and we'll do a word, okay? Because this is excellent. Let me see, where's word? Oh, there it is right there. Because this is why we're here. We're arming you to learn for the rest of your career, not just for the next assessment. If you're just focusing on the assessment and trying to get a good grade and then not thinking about your career, you're doing it wrong, right? Because now what he's referring to are these pages that you can take to every course after this if they talk about these subjects. So what word do you want me to put on top?
Macrophage applicable?
Sure.
Different types.
Okay, so now here's what you do. So you put that word, and everything you read about, and so here's where you get these sources. We heard about macrophages today in class. You might read about them, and there might be mentioned in videos. They will be sooner or later, okay? Now, most of the white blood cells I left for immunology, okay? So, anybody have an idea, a proposition that we can say about the macrophage? What can we say?
You should maybe write down the word and what the 2 cents mean.
Okay, so maybe what I should say is, I'm going to do it this way, large eater, okay? And you can maybe, you can say macro means large. The other thing is you might want to make a separate section in your notes about prefixes and suffixes of the ones you don't know. If you know macro, then don't write it down, it's already up here, right? Okay, a large eater, you would agree, and it doesn't have to be a full sentence. It just means, and maybe I could say means large eater. Whatever, everybody would do this differently. Means, or there are large eater, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be fancy. This is for you, right? Okay, what else can I put down about a macrophage?
It's a white blood cell.
It's a white blood cell, see? Yeah, it is. So I'm doing shorthand. This is very good, because then, and I've had students do this in the past. You wouldn't believe how many pages of stuff we could have, right? And then in a separate notebook, you keep them alphabetically. And then they're easy to get to. And then if you take another class like you will for reproduction, and they talk about the corpus luteum, you'll have a sheet on the corpus luteum. You'll already know that it makes progesterone. It's promoting pregnancy, and so forth and so on. It's pretty powerful. And the younger you are, if freshmen did this, can you imagine the stuff they would accumulate? And you guys are, you're not freshmen, but you're maybe in the middle of your career. Okay, it is a white blood cell. What else? What else can we say about a macrophage? There you go. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. It performs. P-R-Y-T-H. Urethro, phago, T-Y. Did I do okay? Wow, does that look professional? It performs erythrophagocytosis, right? Here's some other things that Aaron said. I'm writing down found in liver, found in spleen, found in bone marrow. Right, Aaron? These are short little propositions. They don't have to be a sentence at all. They mean just, and the thing is, somebody will go, well, if I make this, maybe I'll get a photocopy to my friends, right? And that'd be okay, but it'd be better if you did it yourself. You'll remember it rather than seeing it. Okay, so now the one Chinese proverb was, to teach is to learn twice. Always try that in your career. If you just sit in classes and passively go through every class, you learn this much. But if you are a TA, help in a group or whatever, it goes like this. Here's the other Chinese proverb I like. Write it down, it makes sense. Hear and forget. That's 3 words. Hear and forget. Underneath it, see and remember. So, hear and forget, hear and forget. See and remember. And here's the kicker, the next line underneath that. Do and understand. Very powerful stuff. Do. So if somebody passes out a PowerPoint to you in one of your classes, notice how I don't care who I insult. And maybe they've left something blank, but they've done most of it. Are you doing much? Not a lot. And somebody else will say what word to write down, and you'll be like a robot. And write that word down. I hate PowerPoint. It's fine for when students make presentations. My other 2 classes, people are going to make presentations, and they're going to use PowerPoint because it's nice for them and the slide and all that, and it's not like we're studying off of them. But they're a detriment. I think even the person that invented the PowerPoint program says, it was just meant to present things. It wasn't really meant for learning. It was like if you go to some company and say, here, you should buy my car or whatever, the products I make, that's fine, because it's nice presentation, you can have things going on, but it's not really good for learning. And too many instructors photocopy these things. I see them in the machine over there, and they make these small copies of the slides, and there are maybe 3 to a page, and there's lines on the other side. It's okay, but it's not as good as you writing everything down. I've seen classes where everybody's just yellow, highlighting the words as the instructor says it. Is that going to help you in your career? I don't think so ever. Okay, anybody have any other things they want to say? Perfect. This is great. So submit your questions. But obviously that doesn't take the place of orally asking questions here, but it's just nice if you have a question you're thinking of and it's midnight and you want to submit it. It's a great answer. Okay, I want to show you the textbook to use for all the images that we do. So, and it's google.com. And this is an infinite number of images, because if you have a textbook, the textbook will have maybe 1 image of something, what the author thought you should do. But that's very limited, because when you get out in the world, you'll be bombarded with a lot of images. And I want to do packed cell volume as my example. So, there it is. Okay, packed cell volume, and then I click on images. Now I've got all kinds of things. Now here's the kicker. If I was teaching 6th grade, I probably would rehearse this. Right? There's nasty images. Sorry. Excellent choice. This is my way, stop. My way of going back to the camera and stopping it and restarting it. It's a technical thing. I'll be right back. Okay. What if I search uterus? What do you think I'd find? Yes, a uterus, but could it get nasty? Yeah. So I wouldn't do this in 6th grade. So, you know, sometimes I might search mammary gland. Look what I would find, right? I could do bovine mammary gland, and I want to show you that. But likelihood, some nasty person out there, right, put something on there that the search engine gets. So I'll apologize right now if something nasty comes up. We're all adults, like, okay, some SOB out there, you know, did that, whatever. But it's not going to impinge our learning or impede our learning. Okay, so here we go. Let's find, oh, and here's the other kicker. If you know your stuff, you can explain any image that you've never seen before. And it's a little test for you. Can you do this and have an image come up and say all this, you know, all this stuff about it? And the kicker is, some of them are incorrect. This semester, I'll have an image from wherever, and I'll say, oh, they did that wrong. Okay, so I'm not going to say it's 100%, but, you know, whatever. So let's do a little this. And look, I mean, the other nice thing is, look how big that is. That's going to be recorded very well. And the sound is really well. Okay, so you know, look at these words. Hematocrit, Buffy-coat, plasma. Didn't we say that? But this adds more things now. So if you're not drawing a test tube with this like here, you're not doing it right. Why? Because we know the hematocrit is also called the packed cell volume, and it's red blood cells. Boom. By convention, we're saying 45%. Right? There's normal there. This is probably human. Look at it, varies by sex. And I don't want to remember all those. If you're in the human medicine area, you'd remember those, right? But I just want 45%. So on the assessment tomorrow, if I ask, if you collect 200 mils of blood, how many mils of serum can you get? Right? Then there's that Buffy coat, which most places say white blood cells and platelets are there. A lot of times you can't really see it. So they're never going to be this perfect. But here's something new. This is plasma, and if you know your videos, then to get plasma, you had to have some anticoagulant in the test tube. For example, like heparin, yes.
Do people sometimes call the Buffy coat the fatty layer?
They might. I mean, you know, when you get out in the real world, there's always some jargon that floats in. It could be the fatty. They might call it fatty layer. That's not the best, but, you know. Anyway, but here's plasma. Now look at this figure shows things that are in plasma. Okay, it's full of water, but proteins are up there. What's the main protein you find floating around in here? And that's another way of asking, what's the main protein found in your blood, in the horse's blood, in the dog's blood? What's the name of the main protein found in blood? And if you don't have enough of it, you have trouble maintaining blood volume. This protein is large, and it makes water want to stay in the vessel rather than leak out. We have a hand back here.
Is it a phospholipid?
Phospholipid, no, that's not the one I'm thinking about. Here we go. Okay, no, hemoglobin is inside red blood cells. So here, I'm saying it's floating right there.
Is it albumin?
Albumin, yes. A-L-B-U-M-I-N. Albumin is a large protein found in blood that helps maintain blood volume. If you're low of albumin, the water tends to want to leave by osmosis and get into tissue. Very important. What tissue in the body? Notice how I say tissue sometimes. I don't always say organ. What tissue in the body is famous for making albumin? The liver. So you can have a page of liver on top, right? And all the things we've already talked about. And nutrients, yes, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, blah, 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 blah. Hormones. So I used to run an endocrinology lab. We did this all day long. We did this, collected the blood from cattle 24 hours a day, whatever. And the hormones we took out of here, we measured the hormones in the serum or plasma. I think most of the time we used serum because serum is cheaper. Why is serum cheaper to get if you're talking about thousands of samples?
You don't have to use an anticoagulant.
Yeah, you don't have to buy an anticoagulant. You just put the blood in a plain, empty tube, no chemicals, and it clots, you spin it, and you get serum. So we did serum concentrations of hormones. Anyway, beautiful. Tells us a lot, tells us normal. I'm never gonna ask like little percentages like that. Say, oh, I avoid it. I just say 45%. Okay, then in anemia, which we haven't talked about yet, but there's that prefix AN, meaning without. So that term literally means without blood. It's a little exaggerated. But if you have anemia, you have a relatively low concentration of red blood cells. Does that visually show that? Mm-hmm. You have much more water. So in anemia, the packed cell volume is decreased. In dehydration, you put down dehydration for this one, for right now. You have an increased packed cell volume. Okay, that's like, I'm trying to connect it to yesterday. But since this is up here, I've got to talk about polycythemia. And you can break it apart. Poly always means many. Eme at the end means blood. And cyte, this is like relatively speaking to cells. So there's a lot of cells in the blood. Boom. So this is not dehydration. And that makes a good point. There's sometimes many things that lead to the same end result, right? So this packed cell volume that's increased could be dehydration, or it could be the body making too many cells. Okay? So if you just had that sample, you'd have to get a little clinical history of the, let's say, dog. Oh yes, it was outside all day without water when it was 95. Okay, then this increased packed cell volume is most likely due to dehydration. If it's a normal dog and everything seems normal, then you might think of some disease mechanism where there's too many cells being moved. Excellent, right? Look at how many things we got out of that. Okay, let's do another one. Another image is this that you can do this yourself. Let's see what this gal or guy did. Remember, if you know your stuff, and this would be a good test for you, go to these images and then see if you can explain them. And then if you can't, send it to me by email. You can right-click that and save it to your computer, right? You guys know how to do that? Or take a picture of it and send it to me? Okay, packed cell volume of whole blood. Hematocrit is defined. That's misspelling there. And the thing is, the more I do this, the more mistakes I find. Okay, because the internet is a big library, but there are no librarians, right? So you'll find mistakes. Or if you're reading something and something seems to be totally opposite of what I said, bring it up to me. I'll go, yeah, they should have had increase in that word instead of decrease. You know what I mean? It's easy to do. Defined as a volume. Oh, they're really terrible spellers. Look at that. They spell occupied with an A. Yeah, okay. By erythrocytes in given volume. Okay, whatever. That may also be referred to as packed cell volume. So they've got this. Okay, they make a point of you can use what's called a capillary tube. You might want to break that down. CAPILLARY. A capillary tube is a very, and you maybe have seen them, the very small little tube where you get a little tiny blood sample up, you plug one end with some wax or whatever they call it, and then you spin it in a centrifuge. And it can act just like a test tube. You have like a little tiny centrifuge where these things fit in. And so they had plasma, so they must have used an anticoagulant, right? Buffy coat, white blood cells. Notice how they didn't mention anything about platelets. See? But we know then they could have said Buffy coat equals white blood cells plus plus platelets. And then there's talking about, I think, is that 80? So you'd have to go 36 over 80 to get the percent, right? The whole column is 80. So to determine a hematocrit for this, you go 36 divided by 80. Can somebody do that and tell me what percent that is? Anybody can do that mathematically fast? 36 over 80?
Just under 50.
Just under 50, 45? Okay, so it makes sense, and then see, I verified that their figures are right by your help, right? See what I mean? Because if somebody wrote down something else, then it wouldn't make sense. It's gotta be, no matter what this measurement is, they can do millimeters, they can do inches, they can do microns. I know in a normal sample, 36 over 80 in this case should be, there's a range, remember, right? But, you know, close to 45. Okay, see how fun that is? Okay, let's see, what else do I have on my thing? Oh, you guys are still holding those cards back there, right? Okay, start pass. They've got my business card, and what I want you to do is pass them around. Everybody take one. So even if you know me, just take it, use it as a bookmark, or pass it on to somebody else that might want to visit our site and do quizzes, okay? So I want to do that. I almost forgot, but we still have time to pass. Take one and quickly pass it on. Let's do one more image. So that one just verified, like I said, there's mistakes to be had. Yeah, okay, so now here's a nice little chart. And it's not the best example, but there's a way with these capillary tubes to put it on this little, let's say, chart, and then get the percent over here, okay? But in this case, I'm gonna say, and it's very cloudy, but doesn't it look like they're telling us that the hematocrit is 10%? It looks like. So that's anemia right there, right? Anemic. Okay. Not the best figure. Okay, what else? Anything else that looks interesting? Maybe I'll. This one makes the point. See, this agrees perfectly with mine, right? 55% up here, 45% here. Buffy composed of red blood platelets. This term centrifuge blood. To get these nice separations, you have to, you know, some people will say, go spin the blood, right? That's kind of a jargon in the lab. You don't say, I will now undergo or subject these samples to centrifugation, but that's what it is, right? You're spinning it in a centrifuge, but here's one kicker, and it might save you from wrecking equipment. On the centrifuge itself, you go up and there's a dial for RPM. But never assume the RPM that you used in one lab is the same as another. Because what you're really doing is subjecting the blood sample to times G, gravity factor. And times G is universal the world around. So if you go to France and spin blood, if you know that certain centrifuge needs to get to a certain RPM to give you whatever times G, like 1500, then you set that RPM there. But RPMs are different the world around. Okay? You can't say, oh, we spun our blood back at the lab at 2000 RPMs. That has nothing to do with another lab. And it's all based on how big the rotor is and how far the sample is away from the center. Constant, and every centrifuge comes with a table. To get a certain G, it says, then spin it at this with a certain rotor. And some centrifuges are made to get different rotors in. And if you change rotors, you might have to change RPMs to get the same separation. So that's a little sidebar. Don't assume, just say, if somebody says, spin the blood, say, well, I know back at my last lab, we did it at this RPM, but that's not probably going to be the same in the lab you're working on. Be careful about that. Because those things can tear themselves apart. And there's a thing about balancing too. This gets complicated, but I've seen somebody not balance it, and then the rotor went off the little shaft in the middle and just tore the whole thing up. I think it was like $20,000 centrifuge out the back door. Tore it all up. So never, be very careful with centrifuges. Good, down here. Did we run out?
Yes, we did.
There. Okay, anybody got any questions? Here we go.
So if the plasma is considered to be 55% and the red blood cells are 45%,
Yeah, and remember, and are you gonna get to the fact, what about the white blood cell?
Well, yeah, I was gonna ask what the Buffy coat, like
Yeah.
what percent, does that count as
Right.
plasma? Is it its own and they just don't
Right.
like consider
It's
it?
usually so small that doesn't have an influence.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because here's a good little ratio to remember. For every one white blood cell in blood, there's 1,000 red blood cells. 1 to 1,000 ratio. So there's 1,000 more red blood cells than white blood cells. And so sometimes when you spin blood, let me see if I can see the figure. Let's just do that. Google search. Let's see. Let's do blood. Blood in a tube. I was kind of looking for a real one. Okay, now here's probably one. Now, and this probably gets, who said we call it the fatty layer? Somebody else. Okay, this probably gets to that one. Where is the pointer? Usually what happens, it looks like this, the one on the left. Notice how you can't see anything white on top there, although it's not a very good thing. This is usually what, like, let's say cattle blood looks like. This sometimes happens, and that's not the Buffy layer. See how that's going to fool you? It's really, maybe sometimes people will call it a fibrin clot. It's some material that kind of clots, and it looks like it's, I'm not sure if that's serum or plasma, it's not labeled. But that's not really the true Buffy layer. And maybe, see, and we have to go on to other subjects, so I don't want to get too off the wall. But don't be surprised when there's some stuff in the tube and it's not white blood cells. We used to call it a fibrin clot. Maybe Aaron or Sarah can do some of that, find out a good example of what things look like abnormally. Because it's not an abnormal sample. I remember with cattle, when you let it clot, sometimes there's this fibrin clot, and it will kind of sit there on top of that red blood cell. Question?
When I was running blood samples in my lab this summer, I had that in my serum samples, and my professor said that it's because the animal was not very healthy. Is that a cause, or is that?
Well, let's have these guys think about it. I don't think so. I'm going to say maybe an ill animal has this, but I've had plenty of healthy animals have it. So it's not an absolute, okay? I want to call it a fibrin clot, but let's let those guys chew on that. And of course, you guys can chew on it too, right? You're active. But see, thanks for the comment, because then, you're kind of getting it cleared up for us. We're giving a real world example. What animal was it? Yeah, see? And maybe there's something about, and that's the other thing, species are different. It might be something about cattle. But they're not ill. I've had plenty of healthy animals. When you leave back there, shut that door for me, that'd be great. If we didn't take your picture yesterday, we could. I know there's another class in here, but coming. See you in the app tomorrow.